Mr. Scary Studios. Number 1.
I was only 6 at the time, but the story has been told in my family so many times that I cannot remember it vividly. My mom was a nurse and I was a stay-at-home kid. So every morning she'd pack me up and drop me off at my grandma's house while she was at work. It was just two of us in our 2-bedroom apartment in the Ohio suburbs. We had lived there for several months already and felt quite at home until one afternoon we came home. And the apartment door was wide open. Immediately my mom ran to one of our down the hall neighbors, her friend Betty, and pounded on the door. Betty let us in, and my mom immediately used Betty's phone to call 911. When officers arrived, my mom left me in Betty's care and went into the apartment with them. What was inside was truly terrifying for a single mother of a young daughter. Laundry. Laundry everywhere. Dirty laundry. As officers scoped out the apartment and determined it was all clear, my mom collected the laundry back into hampers and noticed something out of all of our dirty underwear was gone. So dude who broke into our apartment and stole all of our dirty underwear, let's not meet.
Number 2.
I used to jog outdoors until creepy perv guy changed all of that. One beautiful April day, I was enjoying a nice jog near our home. Thankfully, I was always aware of my surroundings and never listened to music or anything while I jog. On this particular day, I was running on the sidewalk and was about to crest a hill. Then I became aware of a car driving past me very slowly. The car was going in the direction I was running. I thought perhaps the driver was going slowly so that he or she could find a street sign. But I still made a mental note of the car. Its color and model. The car's windows were darkly tinted, therefore I couldn't see the driver. The car finally passed me by as I continued my jog. As I hit the crest of the hill, though, and looked down, I saw the car again. Only this time the car was parked facing me, and nobody was inside. There is an alley directly across from where this car is now parked. I had to think fast, just in case the person is in that alleyway. I left the sidewalk at this point and ran into the middle of the road. And as I did so, I recited this dude's license plate number over and over in my head, memorizing it. As I had feared, he was in the alley waiting for me. He was screaming at me. I only took a quick glance and saw that his pants were down around his ankles. I couldn't hear what he was yelling at me about. I just knew his tone was a person who was extremely angry. I was too busy memorizing his license plate number and saying it over and over in my head as I ran as fast as I could go. Once I had made it safely home, I called the police. They came out to my home to take a full report before the day had ended. I received a call from the detective. They had gone to the guy's home and he had admitted to being in the alley. He was charged with indecent exposure and fined. That ended my days of jogging outside. Now I run on my treadmill whenever I see someone jogging with earbuds in their ears. I cringe if I hadn't been aware of my surroundings that day. I shudder to think of what may have happened to me.
Number 3.
This incident took place in the fall during the early hours of the morning following Halloween night of 2015. Perfect timing, right? My boyfriend and I like to dress up in matching costumes, and this year we choose to be Cosmo and Wanda from the cartoon Fairly Odd Parents. If you aren't familiar with it, here's a picture of the characters. We thought it would be a creative choice since we were participating in a costume contest that night, and I had spent the morning getting my hair done and styled to look exactly like Wanda's. My boyfriend and I went all out, and we even went as far as temporarily dyeing our hair with spray paint, in case anyone is wondering. We got the second place in the contest, deciding not to spend the night at his place since I had to go to work the following morning and live 25 minutes away. I made my way back home after dropping him off around 2:30 a.m. Up the street from where I live is a 7-Eleven that I decided to stop at since I was hungry. Pulling into the lot, I put my car in park and prepared to step out. This might sound click, but have you ever had the feeling that someone is watching you? Almost instinctively, I felt uneasy and looked up to notice a man sitting in his car in the spot over to my right. A heavy-set Caucasian man in either his 50s or 60s sat in the driver's seat. He had white, unkempt hair and a scraggly beard, and looked as if he didn't care much about his appearance. Initially, I thought he was staring due to my obscure hairstyle, but after a few seconds, I realized that wasn't the case. I'm a first-time poster, but I've read enough stories on Let's Not Meet to know when red flags start popping up. He wasn't just staring at me, but he was looking at me in a way too attentively, his eyes unblinking. That alone was enough to make me pull out of the parking lot and immediately forget about my hunger. Looking in my rearview mirror, a sinking feeling and uneasiness hit me as I saw his car pull out of the lot and speed up behind me. Was he following me? Okay, we'll stop right there. Although my gut told me yes, I did my best to remain calm and not get paranoid. Yet. I had to be sure. Instead of driving home, I pulled a sudden U-turn and drove towards a gas station close by. He did the exact same. I kept driving and pulled more minor maneuvers, and the man continued to stay on my trail, increasing speed whenever he could. There was no way this was a coincidence anymore. At this point, I was starting to lose my calm and headed back towards the highway, driving back to my boyfriend's place. The man began to aggressively do what he could to stay behind me. At one point, a car got in between us, and the man changed lanes, sped up, and cut the car off in order to stay behind me. Now confirmed, this man was potentially dangerous and could harm me. I called my boyfriend. He always waits to hear that I've made it home safely before falling asleep. So I knew he would still be awake if I called him. He answered, and I quickly explained my situation. Alarmed, he told me to dial 911. Call him back as soon as I talked to the dispatcher and notify him when I was outside. However, I didn't want my boyfriend, now armed with a kitchen knife, to come outside and confront the man, and I was advised by the dispatcher to not let my boyfriend know, as that could lead to a dangerous confrontation instead. The dispatcher told me to drive through his neighborhood without stopping. Thankfully, the dispatcher was incredibly helpful throughout the time I spent talking to him. And I named the street signs and any landmarks I passed by so an officer could locate me. Every few seconds I looked into my rearview mirror, and the man was still tailgating me. It had been more than 35 minutes of him following me, and he had no intention of stopping. What did this guy possibly want? I dreaded red lights and fear that the man would get out of his car and do something. At the first red light I encountered, the man strangely pulled into the next lane. I kept telling myself not to look, fearful of locking eyes with that dead stare again after it turned green. He got back into the lane behind me as we approached another red light. I remember shaking as I firmly gripped the steering wheel, when the dispatcher broke through my foreboding thoughts and told me that an officer would be pulling up shortly. The reason why it had taken so long for an officer to arrive was because I had to stay within one county, and the dispatcher alerted me that I was crossing over into a neighboring county, and I had to turn around. I was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief as soon as those blue and red lights began to flash. Thank God. As an officer made her way over to the man's car behind me, I took the opportunity and called my boyfriend to let him know I was okay. The officer then approached my car, and after I explained to her what had happened, she unexpectedly presented me with the man's driver's license and asked if he looked familiar. It only took me a second to look it over and tell her that I had never seen this man before. The next thing she said to me was almost unsettling, part of the night. According to what he told her, the man claimed he knew me and that he was following me because I was leading him somewhere at almost 4 a.m. Luckily, the officer believed me. A moment later, another police cruiser arrived and the officer returned and notified me that I was free to go. Before I could go to leave the scene, the officer told me that the man was apparently, and I quote, not in the right state of mind and not cooperating, but they still would take care of it. Whether that meant he was on drugs or not, I didn't stick around to find out. So to the man who was not in the right state of mind and claimed he knew me, let's not meet, ever.